Hey guys, what's up? So, we are almost done. We have maybe a couple more things, well, you know, as far as the CRUD system goes. But what we're gonna do next is going to be the create method of the CRUD system. Okay, so we're going to start setting up the form and introducing some new elements, and that are going to be from Bootstrap as well as from the new module within Angular. So what we're first going to do is we're going to add a form, because in order to create anything you need a form, right? You need to be able to fill out a form to create the this title right here, and another one for the time that is going to be due by, and the notification here, the reminder that you're going to need, right? So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so not this server but this one here, we're going to maybe go up. Yep, we're gonna go up and we're gonna just create a component, and that's going to be in pages, home. Yeah, pages home, and then in there, yep, sure, and then in there we're just gonna call it add tasks, add task. Yep, add task component, and we're gonna hit enter. It's going to run it. Good, we're good to go here. So we can close that and put this back on this side here in case we need it. And we're gonna take first, let's just go ahead and close all this stuff here. Let's close everything. We don't need any of this stuff here. Task item, we're gonna leave the task on. Now we're gonna take that out, but we're going to leave that one, and we're gonna take the service out and that one out. So we're just gonna leave this one here because we gotta do something to that. All right, so we're gonna go to the add task component, and we're going to go here, and we're gonna do a little bit of cleanup as always. I'm gonna get rid of that and get rid of this, save, and we're going to get rid of the actual CSS there. Okay, that's done. All right, cool. So now that that's running, I mean, you can see it because we haven't added it yet. We're going to go to the task component, and we're going to go add it right there on the top. So we call it an add task, and if we hit enter, we should see add task works or something like that right on top here, on top of your tasks, or your iteration of task items, which is your task component. All right, cool, that works. So what we're going to put there is going to be basically a form, right? So if we go to Bootstrap and we look here where it says forms and go to overview. All right, so this one here will work. The very first one in overview, just copy that whole thing, bring that back in, and go to the add task, go to the add task HTML, and then you're basically going to paste it in there. Now we're gonna do a little bit of a cleanup in here. So on this form right here, we're going to create a margin. So let's go ahead and class it with my4. Okay. I don't know if we covered this before or not, but I'm gonna go over it quickly. If we look at spacing inside of not content, maybe utilities, spacing, right? So if we look at the spacing documentation here for Bootstrap, they have this formula here that you can create to create margins and paddings. Okay, so the first letter in the formula is going to be an M or a P, which it means basically whether you're going to use a margin or a padding. And then it has the next part of the formula is going to be a T, P, S, E, X, or Y. T for top, which is only going to add with an M. MT will be margin top, or with a P, PT will be padding top. and then bottom, and start, which means only left, and E, which means right. It used to be PL and PR, like P left, L and R for left and right. But because they, there's been this, the other countries, they run differently. They run left to right or right to left or whatever. They have different ways to read the screen. They changed the left or right, and they just became start and end. So that way is whatever your start and your end is no longer an actual left or right. It could just be whatever you start and whatever you end. And X, which is going to be a border, an equal padding or margin in the X axis, so at the beginning and at the end. And then the Y, which is going to be an equal spacing over the top and bottom. And then from 0 to 5, which is going to give you, the larger the number is going to be the larger the spacing. All right, so that's basically what I did. I created an MY4 in here. All right, so what else we got here? We have these fours here. This four labels, they're not really necessary, so we're gonna clean that up, and we're gonna clean this ID and the area label. We're not gonna need that. We're not going to need this helper text there, so let's get rid of this too. I know this says password. We're not doing passwords obviously, but let's just do the cleanup first before we change the stuff. Let's put this label above it because I feel better following the same pattern. Okay, let's close that and take the ID off as well. We're most likely not going to do IDs. We're going to do models, NG models, and we'll go over that soon. Alright, so now we can change. Actually, this one is going to be an input. We're going to use an input instead. Type submit, and then it's going to be a value instead of a. So it's going to get rid of that. Instead of a open, we're going to put a close tag in there. Alright, so now we're going to change this. So the first one is going to be an add task or task title. It's going to be a task title label, and that's going to be of type text. It's not going to be an email. You use a type email when you want the field to be used specifically for emails, and that's good because although it looks like a text field when you fill it out, it's recognized by phone devices or mobile devices as an email. And then when you open your keyboard to type it, it will actually suggest whether it'll add the @ and the .com in the keyboard. So it's it's pretty cool. A lot of people don't use the type, and they just leave it as text. But I think that people should be more mindful to that. All right, so the next one is going to be due by, and that's also going to be a test. Normally that would have been a date field, but we're not going to do date here because that's going to lengthen the class, the course. But I would suggest looking into the date field and looking into what do you call it, like the date object in JavaScript. Sorry, I drew a blank, so I was thinking about something else. But I do want to check quickly. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I wanted to check quickly to see what I did in React, if I did it with a date or not. But I didn't, so that's fine. We'll continue. We'll do it. We'll follow the same thing that we did with the React course. And then the last thing is going to be these right here. Yeah, the checkbox, which is going to be set a reminder. Set a reminder and type checkbox. That's fine. And then finally the value, which is going to be submit task. All right. So, and we want it to be a checkbox, but we could also do it as a radio button because we only have two choices, either yes or no. So a checkbox, if you have one checkbox, if it's checked, it's good. If it's not checked, then it's no. So that also works the same way. If you had more options, then checkboxes definitely has to be the one and not radio buttons. But in this case, either one works. We're gonna go with the checkbox. I think it's whatever. All right, so let's go ahead and save this, and let's go to our field here and see what it looks like after it renders. Not a field, a page. All right, cool. All right, so I don't like this on this side. I don't like to have my buttons on one side. So I'm going to wrap this up with another class, and that's going to be a class, and these are all Bootstrap classes. You can look these up in the Flexbox. I forgot what to call it, but there is a space for all these. They might call it Flexbox. We'll look at it in a minute, and then I'm gonna justify the content of it to the end of the screen, and I'm just gonna go ahead and move this up in it. Cool. All right, let's close that up, and let's just wait for it to move, just so we know we're in the right place. All right, cool, it's there. All right, so about that Flexbox that I was just talking about, if we look at it, layout, I think it's going to be in the grid. So the grid, which by the way we're going to do this soon, that may not be it. Let's go ahead and type it right up there so you can take us right to it. Oh, right here, it's in utilities, call flex. So you see there's this deflex classes, and it tells you right here how to use them for different sizes of viewport and things like that, and how to put something to the beginning, how to put it to the end, how to stack them, how to invert the stack with this column reverse, and justify the content just like we just did, to the right, to the left, to the center, in between them, with space equal in between them, space in the center. So there's all these classes that will help you create a very nice and organized UI. So yeah, so get used to you working with the Flexbox and how it works. All right, so now that we have this, I don't like that this is incredibly large like this on a desktop. Okay, this is way too much space for a title and for it, especially for a date. Okay, so I would like this to be actually a little bit more desktop friendly. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set up a size so that it is maybe half the screen for this element right here, for this component, and then half the screen for these tasks. And then when it gets to like here, for example, or here even, then they can stack up. Okay, so how I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to the task component here, and I'm going to make sure that I create these two elements and separate them into their own columns. So I'm going to start with a row, and then inside the row I'm going to give them a column, and I'm going to set up where I want the break to happen, and it's going to be at the large viewport. So I'm going to give it a column large 6, and then I'm going to reproduce that in here, and now I'm going to bring the tasks in there, and the task items in here. Cool. Alright, so now if I hit enter, you'll see that at this point right now nothing is going to change because it's less than a large, but when I go into a large viewport, then this class is going to kick on. So right now it's fine, but once it hits the large right here, then it starts to work. So what does that mean? Let's go to just so we can understand this, let's go to the grid here and talk about this grid system. So the grid has a container, right? The Bootstrap responsive design framework has a container which is going to be divided into either one big column or two columns, which will be divided. They're technically divided by 12 columns, right? So if you use a column, you can. Okay, so this is really hard to explain actually, without actually showing you. But let me see if maybe they have a breakdown for all of them. Then I could probably show you. No, of course they don't. Why would they, right? All right. So you can break it. You can have a full column. You can break them in half. You can break them in. You can break them into 3 columns. You can break them into 4 columns. You can break them into 6 columns. Yep, 6 columns. And then you can break them into 12 columns. And it all depends on dividing the screen. So when you use a normally, it's going to be a column, whatever, it's one column. When you want to divide it into 2 columns, you're going to use a column 6. So basically what you're doing is 6 for this area and 6 for this area equals 12. It's always going to amount to 12, okay, into 12 possible columns. So column 6 and column 6 equals 12. If you use column 6 and column 2, for example, you're going to end up with 8, which means it's not going to fill the screen. It's going to be, you know, 6 right here for half the screen, but this one's going to be 2 because you're still going to have left over right here, so it's not going to get to the 12. But if you wanted to fill from edge to edge and have 2 columns next to each other, it's got to amount to 12. It's got a total 12, 6 and 6. If you want 3 columns, then obviously it's going to be column 3, 3, no, 4, 4, and 4, because 4 times 3 is 12. If you want 4 columns, it's going to be 3, 3, 3, 3. Get the point? So that's how basically you break down the columns inside the container so that you can end up with a good responsive design. So there will be times where you can just define the column without an actual size. And when you divide a column without an actual size, you're basically telling the UI that no matter what size of viewport you're using, whether it's going to be a large viewport or a medium one for laptops and things like that, or a phone, you always want the screen to be divided by 3 columns regardless. So you're basically defining that you want these 3 columns no matter what the viewport is going to be, no matter the size. You're going to want, when a viewport is small, you want that viewport to show a certain amount of columns, and when it's large to have maybe different amount of columns. So how do you know when these viewports are different columns and different sizes? Well, they are predefined already for you. So an extra small is whenever the container, the viewport, has a maximum width of 576 pixels, and for a small one, it's going to have a little bit over, it's going to be over 576 pixels, but it's going to be below 768. So this is hard to remember, almost impossible to remember. So what I do is I look at the inspector here, and if you can see, you can see up in the corner right here, you're gonna see how you see the numbers are changing. This is how I know, how I can tell when I need to start breaking the component down. So when I come down to here, if I want something to break down at this point, I'm gonna say, okay, that's 1074 pixels wide. So then I could use that to basically find in here what will be the point where I want that to work. So that point will be between this point. So at this point, there will still be a large, and it won't be an extra large until it reaches 1140. So you can do it that way. It's hard to memorize that stuff. After you do it for a very long time, you kind of need to learn to memorize this. At least these 3 right here, these are the most common ones. These right here, they don't really get specified too much because nobody has a monitor that big that you need to have this huge breakdown. If it fits at this point, or if it fits at this point, it's gonna fit at that point too. So yeah, so this is basically how you break down, and you can go over this. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but we're gonna use it. So at this point here, I have it so that it is already breaking down into 2 columns, and then 1 column when it gets to the column 6. However, what I don't like is that this is scooshed up all the way and this one isn't. So I am going to create a class here, call it tasks. And now I'm going to go to the styles down here, and I'm going to make sure that that tasks class that I just created has a padding top of 3 EM. EM is a responsive unit of measure, better than pixels. It just basically, it works a little bit more, and so that you're not really counting pixels, but you're counting units. So 3 units, and 3 units are going to be 3 units whether you, depending on the proportional space that the screen has, whether you're in the viewports, and the smaller viewports or the large viewports, doesn't really matter. All right, so now you can see that they are pretty much lined up. But when you come down here, then there's way too much space in there. So we're gonna get rid of the space, but we want to get rid of it at this point where it's large, right? Where the large kicks on. So if we go here back again and we look at the what is it, the helper utilities sizing, no, not sizing, spacing maybe, no, let's look at the let's see what that would be. Forget now. Breakpoint, that's probably what it is. Breakpoints. All right, so if we look at the break, it's a layout. So if we look at the breakpoints here, that this is what we're talking about, right? When these breakpoints take over, these SM, MD, LG, and all that, they take over at this amount, right? But we know we're using the large already, so that's fine. If we want something to happen from that breakpoint and up, then we use this responsive classes, responsive instructions here. But if we want it to happen, if you want something to happen up to a certain, up to a certain what do you call it, width, then we use this max width right here, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to grab this guy right here, and it shows you here how to use it. So we're going to grab this guy here, and we're going to add that below it. And then in there, we're going to add this guy in there, and we're going to set it back down to 0. So what we're telling it here is, I want you to do a padding top to 3M, but from anything LG and up, no, LG or down, I mean smaller, LG or smaller, take the padding top off. So now when we hit save, we're gonna see that the padding here is gonna be fine, and it is fine. But as we start getting into the smaller ones, it went away. So let's see let's see it in motion actually. If we look at the inspector and we look at this task class, where did we add it? Let's just inspect closer. Task. If we look at the task here, you can see that it says the padding top is 3M. That's what we decided that we wanted to do. Put a 3M on it, right? And then you see this media here where it says column min width 992, whatever. No, not that one actually. It's not showing up yet. I'll show you where it is. And then as it goes down, and then we wait for it to take effect. Oh, it already did. So now that it took effect, here it is. Here's the other one that we added. This guy right here, the breakpoint one. And here's where it added. We're now at the max width of 992, which is the large one. Then make sure that the padding top is 0. So it overrode this task that we added earlier, and added this one at a media query, which at a responsive point. Okay, so And that is basically how you're going to set up a lot of this responsive classes, so it looks nice and neat and not overdone, overkill with so much space. So these right here will just continue on as much as you fill them, and this will always be here. But eventually we're going to work so that this add button brings this up conditionally. So this eventually is going to take the whole screen anyway, but I just wanted to show you how you can break the screen up into two pieces and do some conditional sizing using CSS, which is neat that you don't have to do JavaScript to do this stuff. You can do it right with CSS and it will be just as cool. Alright guys, so we'll continue in the next lesson on how to actually wire this form so that we can start using it and start adding tasks to our task list over here. Okay? Alright, see you in the next one.